Welcome to another episode of the Full Tilt podcast. Today we are in Bali and I'm interviewing a really interesting guy who has had the most extraordinary life. So I want everyone to get along with me and enjoy Rajiv Arapurakal, sorry, I hope I got that right, who has had one of the most extraordinary careers and is still having an extraordinary career, living in Bali, born in India, spent the early part of your life in Austria and then educated and lived most of your life pre-Bali in the United States. So welcome and wow, before we even get started at your journey.
Belinda, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Pleasure. Really great getting to know you. So talk to us a little bit about that journey. That's an extraordinary one for a young Indian boy who would arrive in the United States with a European Indian culture, speaking German, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
In an all-English school environment. Talk us through what that was like.
The first thing that comes to mind is just not being inside the group.
Right.
Like I remember showing up, being in line, going from the main classroom to the cafeteria or the music room, and just everything was very visual. Everything was very emotional and visual, and I had to make sense of things before there were words for them. Right. So I remember kids' faces who were from my kindergarten class before I knew what our conversation sounded like. And I've literally years later seen one of those kids on the New York City streets and asked, hey, did you go to kindergarten in Princeton at this little place? And they're like, who are you? I was like, we were in class together.
Oh, no way. You can remember them that well because of the experience.
So really being imprinted upon that there was I remember being outside, you know. So I come in, little brown kid, speaking German, grade 1, and it was just clear to me that I wasn't part of the group. The kids were all from all different backgrounds, different flags and passports and skin colors, and I just knew that they had something, and I was just curious. Some were nice, some were mean, some were some would hold my hand, and some would point out things. And within 6 months, my brother and I were speaking English just fine.
And do you think, because I actually had a similar experience in going to different schools when I was younger, but not different languages. The thing that interests me there is you seem to be very, grounded about the experience. So was there anything at all that helped you do that? There was no real negative in being a kid in an environment, I would imagine, that for immigrant family in a small town like Princeton, you must have really stood out.
Yeah, now Princeton has a lot of Indian families, but at the time there was no other Indian kid in our class.
Right.
So we were pretty lucky to be able to try. My parents never put boxes around us of what we had to be or anything we had to strive for. Right. They just let us try and play in everything, from martial arts to choir, to just all different things. And I think I was telling you before we turned the record on, the recording on, that when I was in second, I guess 2 stories come to mind from being 7 years old. One was I got 100% on a spelling test. Right. And I was like, oh, and I noticed other kids just didn't have that. It was just other. And I was like, oh, how do they not have this? Because I've been working to participate and join the group and to be relevant in this small little way. I think I realized then that I just have a say, that I could learn things. Right. And I could learn and play at whatever the game was. Yep. And another story that comes to mind from that age was we went to India every summer. So I speak enough Malayalam from Kerala to get around and just know what I'm eating and I know who's making fun of me. Okay. Important. It is. In a language that's very full of sarcasm and humor, you gotta understand it. Have your self-defenses ready. Yeah. And so one summer we were there at that age, and my uncle took me to see to meet some other family. Got off the train, went to a park. There was a man literally standing on a wooden crate, like a fruit crate. And he was talking to about 30 people, and he was yelling at the top of his breath, and he was preaching from the gospel. And I didn't know what he was talking about. But at that age, at age 7, and I realized, oh, if I fail out of grade 4, if in 2 years, if I fail before I get to the end of primary school, I can do this. At the very least, I'll have this capacity. Right. People would listen, and I had to figure out what was worth speaking about. Awesome. Okay, so I think I can see where and how you've ended up. Your career, so we'll just explain to those people that are watching, is fascinating to me. So
you finished school. You then started a career in advertising and marketing.
Yep.
Then you went and studied to be a physician. Or was there a yoga teacher thing in the middle of there as well?
Exactly. In the middle of that.
In the middle of that. And you decided to be a physician. So that, obviously, the willingness to learn and that capacity to think, okay, what's next? What else can I learn? How did those sort of, we won't even talk just yet about how you've ended up in Bali, but those three bolted together. There's not a lot of similarity, particularly from a physician and marketing and advertising.
I thought a little bit about this. I felt like I was dominated by being awkward as a middle schooler. Again, I got taller all at once. So when all the boys were this tall and all the girls were a little bit taller, I was the kid who was taller than the girls. And so I kind of stood out in that moment. And then a year later, I gained 50 kilograms. So I was a pretty big, overweight kid.
Right.
And so just goofy and running into things. And if I was playing tag with the kids, like they'd get hurt, and I was like sometimes double their weight. It was it was very striking, and so I really wanted to be less awkward. And I found ways to join sport.
Right.
I ended up rowing in the crew and in the boats in high school, and in college I found martial arts.
Okay.
And as I was pursuing my studies in Baltimore, what I wanted to help and figure out was stories of peace. Like, how is it possible? What do we have to learn? How do you build up the strength of the individual body, the individual person, as well as study something well enough to offer peace in certain regions? So in the 90s at the time, there was different stories in the Balkans and the Middle East that were very troubling, and so I'd studied that. And I ended up studying international relations and economic development at Hopkins to find that story.
Mm-hmm.
And as I noticed that I wasn't finding inspirational places that were good at making young people into leaders in the nonprofit sector and in the NGO sector, it's just from my point of view at the time, I thought it would take like too many years to get like one rung up or wait for someone to die or like someone to be appointed above you. And I was like, it just didn't feel like the meritocracy of that. I just didn't have enough examples of that to see.
Okay.
And so I fell into my family the lore of advertising. My dad and grandfather had both been in those sectors.
Okay.
And I felt at the time it was temporary. I knew I just wanted to learn more skills.
Yep.
You know, going from being an okay high school student to being an okay college student, I just wanted to learn. Being an international relations student, you can just study languages and economics and history and just pick and choose different things. Right. And they're
sort
kind
of combine
enough,
them. Yeah.
They're kind enough to put it into one certificate that says
one bucket.
You're certified to talk about these things a little bit. But in advertising, it's just so cool to be able to learn how to tell stories and to work with people with decades of experience. Right. So being 22, 25, and working with people who have 20 years of experience, just to make sure 7-Up goes from the bottling plant to families, or Colgate-Palmolive. We got to work with some really large brands.
Right.
And so I wanted to be able to tell a story, and then I figured down the line I'd be wise enough or be near enough people to tell stories that I thought were worth telling. Mm-hmm. And as I got into advertising, I found, at some point thought I'd want to be the head of this office or the bigger group, but I did end up burning out with lots of hours and lots of consecutive days in the cubicle. And my last day of advertising was also my first day of yoga teacher training. Wow. And I just wanted enough yoga to not need to go to a class, to go to a place. I just wanted to be able to go to Central Park and figure out what healthy meant, just to move around. Okay. And I knew that martial arts wouldn't continue. I don't know if I mentioned that. I ended up getting a black belt in Taekwondo during college, just to re-grasp my sense of awkward, to be able to at least know like where my body was at different times, being this size, to have some grasp of it. And so yoga was fun for me because it was really this path of going from awkward to less awkward to adding grace. And then as I taught, I ended up teaching because friends of mine who were in my training with me were like, hey, can you cover this class? Right. Teach these people over here.
Handy.
Yeah.
Built-in customers.
Yeah. And can you go to Chinatown, where I found out they didn't even speak any English sometimes. Right. And so I'm teaching using my body language and trying to convey an hour of movement to people who don't have a common language with me. And as I added science to that, I thought I'd add science to that just to bolster it. Right. And my question to myself at that time was, how do I keep my eye open? How do I avoid this like tendency for sunk cost? Like just because I spent a year or 4 in certain directions, do I have to honor that because I spent the time already? Or can I always ask myself, like, what's the real next step to take?
Right.
So I ended up doing a pre-med program in Manhattan. It's called a post-bac degree.
Right.
And went to medical school in New Jersey and practiced medicine for 10 years.
Wow. Amazing. So in the sense of you describing all of these things, even the experience that you had as a kindergarten or junior school kid, what rings through to me is that there's this innate sense inside you to really, it's almost a physical need to have a new experience, to have these different experiences. And the other thing that I find extraordinary is you didn't wait till you left medical school to get married. So you've had these really intense experiences almost perpetually, one after another. That's really interesting to me. Do you think that's something that you're craving in terms of the way that you're developing yourself as a human being, or you think these were just sort of circumstances that happened?
I don't know exactly. What I did really have a sense of was a sense of belonging and not being in the in-group. And when I realized over time that I had a say to include people,
right,
or to minimize gossip or turning people or cutting people down, that there's a flip side to actually be productive, to include and to listen.
Okay.
And so that's where I noticed in choirs or martial arts or having a say was that it's not just what the avalanche of history has to require, but we have the ability to include, to see what's bright and what's possible with everyone. Right.
Fascinating. And so your wife is a very accomplished architect and has a design and architecture company, award-winning one here in Indonesia. So you left the United States and you didn't just leave being a physician, you then catapulted yourself into a different culture, different experience, and you joined your wife's business that is now very celebrated. Talk us through that whole transition. Did you make that decision as a mutual one, or you decided that this was, again, another iteration of you wanting a different experience? And this one, again, is cultural, which I find fascinating, as well as academic and physical.
So there's a lot in that question. I think
Sorry.
We can write a book together. So when I met Alora, love of my life, I was teaching yoga on the Upper West Side, and I was just taking my first biology classes.
Okay.
So this is also like 10 years after my last science classes in high school. I'm taking biology at Columbia among kids who somehow think that they should be able to take a path towards medical school. Alora at the time was working in fashion. She was painting fabrics for Donna Karan, and she ended up leading the prints and patterns for DKNY, which is a sub-brand of the Donna Karan brand. And so we had no sense of we were the beginning of both of these careers. There was no clear, obvious star on the horizon of where we were destined to go. So a few years into that, she was invited to go back to where she was raised in Bali. She grew up here in Bali since she was 3 months old. And she took her sense of design and her sense of empathy and was asked to design homes made of bamboo.
Right.
And then she's gone on to design with many materials to further building homes made of natural materials with local hands.
Okay.
And
jumping in there, the two of you work side by side in this new business. So that's another experiential thing that for me is also extraordinary, that you're working with your partner in such a highly competitive but also highly creative environment, which is fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, one thing to clarify. She's not actually an architect, though she was named Innovator of the Year by Architecture Digest.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's we hear it every day.
Okay.
We just have to remind ourselves when we tell your millions of viewers that we're designers and we have an architectural team within us.
Okay.
And Alora's the creative design force behind basically every structure that they've made.
Okay.
And the team works together really closely, and now they've gone on to design
amazing things. So the Green School here in Bali, which for those watching that don't know much about Bali, but this is a very well known, totally eco-based school for kids. You've also worked for projects for the Four Seasons. You've worked for projects for other hotel groups like the Como luxury resorts, and you've also, I think, your wife's father has his own boutique hotel, which has just been named the top luxury boutique hotel in Indonesia, which is awesome.
Yeah, so there's a lot in there too. Yeah, we've been lucky enough to design, I think I said about 300 structures in 4 continents, and yeah, I guess I can develop different parts of that. A lot of this is born, a lot of this creativity in the bamboo and natural sector comes from John and Cynthia, who about 15 years ago, almost 20 years now, built a green school which now has 500 kids from 40 countries, and it inspires both with look and feel. IBUKU, the design group we lead, was lucky enough to design some of the buildings there, including the Green School Gym, which got some attention last year for being shortlisted on the Aga Khan Architectural Prize.
Yep.
So we're really proud of that combination of going from just the sense of fairy mushroom homes and like sweet and lively to connecting with the engineers and the decision makers who trust us to make a real
extraordinary
impact.
Buildings too, yeah, and not only, again, it just keeps this one word experience just keeps coming through everything you do, which is really interesting to me. So you continue to teach yoga whilst you're here?
Yeah.
Right.
I get to teach at Alchemy Yoga nearby and Bambooinda.
Right.
And at the Green School.
Right.
It's been
so that's continued to be a really deep part of your own personal sort of discipline?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like really the connection to nature is the whole story, and how we are in the morning and how we are at the night, how we participate in fashion and what we live in. It's all connected. Yeah. And so it's really all the same thread, and I'm lucky enough to have several years of experience in different sectors of that, from the hospital to the yoga room to design to branding.
Right.
And it's really all the same story.
So on top of that, you've founded a company called CEO Vision, where you provide coaching for CEOs, which is obviously a lot of the clients that we have, that we facilitate retreats for through We Group Global, are obviously CEOs or in senior management positions. So I'm really interested in your answer to this question. So how do you see the experiences that you've had, sort of materialise in the coaching and the advice that you give CEOs through your consulting company, CEO Vision, and maybe tell the guests listening what you do? And I know it's around brand clarity and positioning leadership within that. So talk to us a little bit about how that all sort of came together.
So that was founded by my father, Rajiv Arapurakal. He came from a background in studying history and listening for the threads and the tendencies among cultures. Okay, great. How we, agree or disagree with the central story of how your group, your nation stands. Yep. When he was 17, he saw a globe, and he was wondering, how is it possible that the small island nation of the UK could control what all happens in India, which seemed much bigger and clearly is much bigger. Right. And he asked himself, what's true about this way they present stories that a whole subcontinent has bought in. Right. And so that informed, and we can ask him when you interview him next. Yeah, I hope so. I'm interested. How we send story into business, and how we have clarity in that way. So CEO Vision really came out of those client relationships that he had, and that I was lucky enough to have, and to work together to draw out and reduce the friction between really deep, meaningful ideas and people who are trying to solve those. Wow. And how they connect with their customer base and their clients, and minimize the waste from the center of where we stand to where we can go. Okay.
And what do you think the central, from the people that you've coached, or certainly from working with your dad in this area of business, is there like a central theme that you think that is really missing from the lives of sort of CEOs and senior management teams when you're coaching them, when you're talking to them? Is there sort of one area where you think like the world could sort of probably do better in that sort of coaching sphere?
Well, we do a lot of listening. A friend of mine called me an aggressive listener.
I love that. Yeah. I'm going to use that. I'm not good at it, by the way. I'm getting better, but I haven't been always good at it.
And so when we're making these brands, or we're serving somebody, and it's not just like 100 years ago, if you made something, the producer got to decide the terms. Right. You could have a Model T in any color as long as it's black, was what the producer said. Right. Right, around 1910. And now things have flipped. People have options. They can decide. Yep. And so everyone has to know that from all the possibilities in the world, they can choose all those possibilities or work with your team.
Right.
And so the commitment really has to be the moment of preference.
Right.
That moment of preference is really based on understanding what the overlap is between what you're willing to offer and what people seek to be whole or to be complete or to trade gold or time with you to trade for. And so really you have to solve the most important emotional problem that you can solve. And so we work from there to go backwards to say, what's the world we see? What's the vision? And everyone says vision and mission. It's all these complicated words and these jargon we put up on the wall at the hospital or different places. It's really just what I see in the future. And you choose a timeline, 5 years, 10 years.
Okay.
What is the future you see? And then the mission is just what is your team willing to solve to make that world possible?
Okay.
And it's really should be straightforward. When we get all like highfalutin and poetic and like, you know, like grandiose, like people can see through it. People can see it was made by committee or by AI.
Yeah.
And AI is getting better. So like the language is like, it's harder to tease out human from algorithm. And so we really go from that center point of what's the moment of preference? How do you listen for what you're solving for? And if you see a world, what are you committed to doing to make that world possible? And then there's a few steps of how to tease that out. And we've been really lucky to have some great clients to solve with them, like where they're going forward.
Awesome.
Usually creative groups or smaller groups who are trying to find their voice. Because oftentimes we're not really good at helping ourselves, and when we're good at helping other people, and to even apply some of those strengths we have for others to ourselves can be challenging. So we're glad to be there for them.
That's awesome. So you're going to sort of stretch a little bit of that a little bit more. So this podcast is called Full Tilt for a couple of reasons, but one of them is that it's really focused on the entrepreneurial spirit and that need. Really, for all of us, it's almost like an obsession, and that comes wrapped in fear and a whole range of different things, and sort of certainly a lot of the elements are the result of having to pivot your life or your business as things around you change or as your internal sort of body metrics decide you want to go a different direction. Is there a particular, because you've had what I'd sort of describe as multiple pivots in your life. Is there any one point in time where there's been sort of a major moment in your life where it's really had you double check yourself and think, okay, am I doing the right thing? Am I going in the right direction? Has there sort of been one moment that you can think of that's been really clear where you maybe second guessed yourself?
It does come down to belonging and listening. I think I've been very lucky to be a physician, to be in rooms where people expected to just be treated like whatever their fashion and whatever their sense was or whatever people tend to judge them as. People don't like to just be put in a box. And when they come in to the hospital, it's usually on a pretty crappy day. It's usually one of the worst days of the month, if not the year for them. And I think sometimes people are used to being treated like a bag of symptoms and sent back on their way. And so I find I'm trying to apply this listening, this sense of belonging, and this sense of story, that the person is more than this week's challenges, and to put in the context of what all got them there. Sometimes it's a chronic disease. Certain behaviors for long times will result in something, and sometimes it takes a while to get past that. So the moment, this day or week you're in the hospital is one thing, and to recover from things takes also a while. It's not always just a one-day fix. So I think I just remind myself, it's just, I have one woman in mind, seeing how she came in, that she felt really like heard and listened for. And it reminds me that like she doesn't have to care what certificates are behind me on the wall. I have to listen for her, what her needs are. We have to solve a plan together. The plan that I offer doesn't matter if she's not going to be a part of it. And so I have to listen for what's believable for her. I've literally had patients who came with their son or a family member, and as a junior doctor, I remember giving a recommendation. It was for blood pressure, follow-up and management. And I noticed like 3 months later they came back, and the woman said her blood pressure is still high. And my immediate thought was to increase the dose. And as I asked more questions and figured out, they don't believe in the medication. They never took the medication. Or maybe it wasn't her so much as her son who was like guiding and listening. And And then what are they going to do? Walk away with doubling the dose of this and that type of blood pressure medications, which if she takes at some point would be too much because we don't know how she responded to the low dose.
Right.
So this is as early days as a resident, as a junior physician, that I realized that like the plan doesn't matter unless everyone's on board. Right. So really, again, like listening and finding that story, and to the second woman, like really understanding, like getting a sense that her sense of fear, whether you're coming in with a heart attack or a stroke, the listening helps to calm. The listening, that she feels heard, that we can, and I'm not there at midnight with somebody who's just coming for the worst pain in their life to talk about meditation, but we can slow down the pace. Right. We can say what the stresses are. Right. And so in those moments, I feel very privileged to have that. And I do, to answer the question of like these inflection points, is that I try to have that sense of gravity or sense of respect for my audience in all the things we're doing.
That's very rare from a physician, I might add. But I know that's great that you have that sense, because I know from my own experience, it's unfortunately physicians aren't known for their bedside manner in most cases, but it's great that you have that insight.
Well, in defense of physicians, we were lucky to be trained by a great group at Cooper in Camden, New Jersey, so shout out to them. That there is research to show that if you're sitting down, if you're sitting face-to-face, you let the person speak their whole thing. There's research to show that actually they think you're listening more than you might have been. There's research to support that they think you've been in the room longer than otherwise. Yes. So a lot of it is trainable. Yes. You know, in my experience, the kids who get into med school, a lot of them were spent a lot of time in the library. Oh yeah. And so they're really good at what they're good at, and you want them to be good at those things.
Yes, you do.
And also, it turns out that the way we chose med students from the past to now is it can be different. Absolutely. So you don't need them to be the top of just a science, but also, you know, the dean of admissions at Columbia, he had like a one question to himself that he always had, and I just saw this just recently. I got to talk to him when I was in my pre-med days, and he would ask, as he's interviewing a new medical applicant, could he imagine being in this person's care or not? So it's very, very simple for him. Could he imagine the possibility of this person stretching from where they are, usually as a 22 or 23-year-old and sometimes older candidate, to see like, would you trust yourself in that care? Right. And so we are, and I think it's happening at least across the U.S. Yes. That we're listening for, you know, who shows up. Right. And I think you've mentioned two really important things, certainly that I'm fascinated by, the combination of belief and fear in human design, because obviously they're massive, I don't know whether you would call them motivators, but they're certainly the internal decision makers that humans use to sort of moderate or navigate their life. Did you have any beliefs or fear during your, you know, extraordinary career where you felt that pull of maybe limiting or moderating what your choices might have been? Yeah, I think always. Right. And, you know, I ask myself, like, what does courage look like? What does taking a stand look like? And we talked in the past about what fears like limit you and prevent you from participating. And sometimes the story of what's worth participating is just worth it. I ask myself, like, what are the consequences? What's the worst case if the fear shows up? And can I take a bet that I'll handle it, that I can respond to that situation without it completely crippling me? And I'm pausing for a minute because there was a time of trauma in my teen years, which was an abuse of power from the clergy, in a way that made me really ask, like, what is it like? I'm lucky. I get to have a solid brain, loving parents who were able to be emotionally supportive when I changed some of these directions. Right. Buddies, girlfriends, family would all ask, like, why would you take a step away from this and go to that when you're already on the path to doing well in this direction? Right. And so we're lucky that we can look back with the knowledge that we have and sometimes leave the town that we were stuck in. Some people can't leave. Right. There's abuses that show up and people are stuck and they're under a thumb of a certain personality. Right. Sometimes in the family and sometimes from local power. You know, all the stuff we've talked about belonging and participation and having a say. I just want to remind everyone that they have a say and that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And then if they start from that and we ask them with a little structure, a little leeway, a little creative space, if you stretch out that attention span for consequence from just this week and what's happening to you right now to how you can improve the community.
Right.
And that community can be one child or your neighborhood or possibly the globe.
Right.
That really a lot is possible. And I do respect that some people just can't get out of their cycle of their daily or their weekly or their cycle of being in a certain path that was, they think, written for them. And I just ask that how can we just pull away a little time, like 5% of your time during the week to study the direction you're curious about, and then be willing to fail. I've definitely failed a few things in my time.
Yes, so have I. And it's definitely something I encourage all of those out there. Never fear failure. It's an actually fantastic tool. So talking about hardest calls, and I guess failure sometimes is incorporated in those things, what's the hardest call you've ever made, and what do you think it cost you?
A few come to mind, but right now the brightest one is just walking away from a paycheck.
Okay.
Like in my advertising career, I got to be at a great place called Young and Rubicam, and like the paycheck was small, I mean, at the time, but it was everything that was coming in, and to leave that, to say that things can work out is it's difficult, right? You're used to that constant supply coming in, so I can participate in New York and play with my friends. I remember when I realized I had to walk away and pursue this yoga idea, and I had to consider what the downside would be, what does failure look like, what's the worst case situation. And one of my earlier jobs was to be a waiter during college.
We've all been there.
Yeah, just at least to remind myself that in the worst, I could participate and be useful and have the experience, because you can't become a waiter unless you've had experience being a waiter somewhere else. And so I just to remind myself that I have enough social and intellectual and experience behind me to be able to play. So that was tough, to walk away from the paycheck and then to see what's possible.
Okay, and so now you've also got, which I've recently appeared on, so thank you for that, your podcast From Awkward, which is really focused on reinvention, which we sort of talked a little bit about today, and you've almost done that from birth by the sounds of things, which is extraordinary when you put it in some sort of sequence. I can see the strings that have sort of led you forward. They're very similar. And your focus is really about a reinvention from sort of towards health, nature and community. So combining those so I'm assuming humans have a much more fulfilling sort of experience in their own communities. What's sort of your end goal? What do you hope to achieve through your podcast and sort of, I think, combining the streams of who you are, which is the sort of marketing or the sort of the voice, if you look at it that way, which is your podcast, the holistic element of what you do, which is obviously medical practice, and then your design and creative component, which is sort of building something new for the world around you. What's your end goal? Because I find that, obviously it's an extraordinary way to bring all of your great skills together. Where do you hope it goes? What do you think you're going to achieve from it?
Yeah, when you put it that way and you cover all the topics, it's hard to. It seems hard to put it all into one thing. For me, I try to simplify things to keep them addressable. I think I'm just looking for elegance within nature. Okay. And I feel like there's just being able to share and being able to participate is we should get to do that. And right. I think some kids just weren't taught to do that. Some of the avalanche of culture that came to some people just didn't allow that to be like the likely next step. Right. And so I'd really just like to reveal for those who are curious to walk in that direction, to say, hey, you can take a step towards the health of your body. Yep. By taking a breath. Yep. If you want to just sit and find meditation, I'm curious about that, enough to learn and enough to teach. If you want to move and touch your toe and like bend a certain way, that's also part of it. Right. And then how that expresses, whether it's design of your home or design of the story of what you want to stand for,
Right.
I feel like it's all the same thing.
And I think it's wonderful. What I love about it and what you're trying to do is that these conventional aspects don't have to be separate. So you can give yourself permission to have an alternative view, and which is the great name of your podcast, which is awkward, because I think all of us, until we become proficient at something, are awkward. So if we're trying to learn new things, the assumption is you will be awkward. So it's great that you're bringing that sort of space open to people to say, hey, you don't have to be brave here. You can just listen, try it out. I'll talk to you about all new things, it's a really great premise for a podcast. So I think it's awesome. So taking that next stream, so you've also done some work for the wellness retreats here in Bali, and and obviously you're more than skilled to be able to do so. So what is that experience like, taking people through a wellness retreat in an environment where obviously the elements we've just discussed that you're wanting to bring to life through your podcast? So the creativity, the understanding of your human physiology and your personal health, be it mental, physical, or the combination of both. What has that journey taught you about the process of healing that your medical career didn't teach you?
I'm very humbled. Like it's so cool to be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being a physician in the hospital is one thing, and then, the question I ask myself when I'm in front of any space is, what's the promise that these people think I'm making that I get to be in front of them? As a physician with a stethoscope, or in front of a group of people offering yoga, or leading a retreat.
Right.
And I have to guess what they want. Partly it's based on whatever was in a brochure or the website, or what we've discussed and presented for them.
Right.
But clearly that's a subset of what all is possible. Yeah, your question has a lot of points in it, but
So is there one thing that you think that you see that a wellness retreat, and I'm not I don't want it to be perceived that I'm criticising the traditional physician or health system, because I think, again, all things on balance is the best approach, right? But is there anything specific that you maybe see from the clients or the guests at wellness retreats that they're needing, that the traditional medical environments don't seem to be able to see or can't give?
Yeah, I think when you have the larger attention span for time, if you're
Right,
committed to 3 or 4 days in this direction of curiosity, we're able to address the immediate challenge, and take a look at the story of what came up to here, the moment of what you think what you'd like to solve from there, and then offering enough space and listening and community and feedback so that you can make possibly a more informed, open-minded, creative decision. And sometimes it goes way left turn from what they expect.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone's asking about how do you make more, negotiate a better salary or get to a bigger role, and you might actually realize you'd actually been wanting to write children's stories in one case, or to learn and to teach mindfulness practices, because somebody was able to just go from being very anxious to being calmer, and that changed their relationship with their daughter or their parent or their sex life. And
so you think it's just time and attention, sort of that space for people, or do you think it's more than that?
I think I'm specifically, I find myself to be built for the driven, ambitious person who will take steps forward to support their own direction. Right. So I do expect that they're listening and learning and participating, and I appreciate that there's more than the dollars we trade is the time. Right. Their time is so valuable. Right. And so it's not just time. It's a combination of establishing what that promise is in the beginning, what I'm committed to creating, to write your sense of purpose, to make it believable and digestible and how it bleeds into the rest of your life, to offer enough safety for guards to come down, for vulnerability to show up. That's an important way to get some sort of structural change, for sure. And then there's just revelation of face-to-face is one thing, and then listening for what you're not willing to talk about is another thing. Right. And there's an inflection point there of where we come from and where we want to go. Yep. And what's really worth participating in, because you're asking yourself as you're growing up, what's next? Right. And sometimes it's oftentimes it's always been in you already. But,
right, that's true.
But what we're willing to say is also through the lens of what society or that or what your grandmother, living or dead, like would allow you to do.
Right.
When you can keep that in the box, or put that all on the paper, and then ask yourself, given that all this is true, if I can relax and be playful, like what can I really participate in?
Okay.
And that test is, I think people really respond to that.
Yep.
People want to be challenged. Some people want to be challenged.
Yep.
And they want to be in a place where people are participating and ambitious and creatively driven.
Yeah.
And I've been just lucky to see that for the most part. It comes up with really great ongoing results.
Great output. Yeah, I can imagine, especially with your training and being the guide on the retreat. So is there one thing that you've seen through all of your experience now that keeps people well? Is there like one single thing that you could say, hey, if we all did more of this, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually really quite simple. We have all these, biohacking is coming up. There's blood tests that we can get into, or I can read with you. There's imaging, and there's like lots to spend, right? We've seen some amazing people online and for decades who've been writing that story.
Right.
But also, 80% of those results can come from free things.
Right.
Understanding how you respect your sleep.
Right.
Writing down what you stand for this week.
Right.
What the goals could be.
Right.
Listening back to when you were 13 and all you knew about health and food and nutrition and what you should and should not put in your body, just from back when you were in 8th grade.
Right.
12, 13 years old. That covers like really most of your base.
Right.
We can get into injectables
yes.
and hormone
and
therapies.
Supplements and goodness.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but buy into the story of your own sense of health from where you're starting. It comes back to that lady and her son about the medications. Like, what's the plan you're willing to participate in? Right. And then sure, if you're going to, and sometimes we respond to how much we spent on things, or really avoiding the pathology that your mother or uncle might have had. And so with all that, there's stories you can write in the physical body and also in the storytelling that we have. And so it really comes...
the belief and the fear that informs it too, I think, is something that there's a lot more, which is great. There's a lot more awareness around the impact of that, I think, on physiology now, which is interesting and something that I'm fascinated about as well, the more that we understand how, there's probably, I don't know if in your medical school days, but it's only really been relatively recent from my understanding that physicians are really treating the brain and body as one unique organism, where they were really treated as separate sort of, you would go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist for this. Your biology somehow wasn't affecting your brain if it was affecting your stomach, so that to me is a huge progression, and that's part of, I think, that layering approach now, that it's a 360-degree view that includes what you believe. To your point, if you don't believe the medicine's going to work, then they're not going to participate in your healing program, right? So, yeah, it's fascinating to me. It's been an extraordinary career for you. Thank you so much for all the insights you've given us today. We usually finish our recordings and our interviews with 5 rapid-fire questions. So I've got 5 for you. Are you ready?
We'll see. Okay.
I'll fire them at you. The one person, patient, guest, customer whose story that you experienced stopped you in your tracks?
In my tracks.
Or made you really sort of, really take notice of what was happening?
Okay, this is from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
The school nurse in my high school, when she found out that I got into Johns Hopkins for undergrad, mm-hmm. she called me over on the overhead system.
Intercom system. Yeah.
Said,
I remember. It's taking me right back to my boarding school days. That's such a weird
Rajiv Arapurakal, please report to the nurse's office. Please report.
Way.
So we're seniors in high school.
Oh,
we've already graduated. We're about to graduate. And she pulls me down. I was like, "What's going on? Like that never happens.
Right.
No one gets summoned to that place." And she said, Rajiv, like I noticed in you that you got into Hopkins.
Right.
And you're not pursuing medicine. And you're the kid who always walks in the kid with the ankle sprain or some other thing, which isn't all the time. It was like 3 times that year.
Oh, funny.
All the time, overselling it. But she made me really consider, what's possible.
Okay.
Just from what she was inspired by. And so a lot of other stories come to mind, people coming in passed out into the hospital, or people being really anxious and coming in and finding that just an hour of breathing can change how they see their possibilities.
Right.
But that was a real moment to see that she was inspired by something that she saw from all the kids she was with. And I realized that everyone has that. That every kid has that. Every kid who becomes a grown-up has that. And we can listen for that. And I think and I hadn't really thought of that until you asked, that's like the central piece of what I think I'm beginning to offer, is just some slice of recognition that you get to play at the highest level you want to play. And there's moments for when that's possible.
It's a choice. Yeah,
that's
awesome.
Mrs. Wadsworth.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mrs. Wadsworth, who also was a polyglot.
What a great name too for a school nurse, Mrs. Wadsworth.
She was a school nurse, and she had a bakery, and she had a flower shop, and her son was my football coach.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. What a fantastic woman. We have to track her down. Best piece of advice you've ever received, and who gave it to you? Probably Mrs. Wadsworth.
Beware the man of one book.
Ah, wise words. And who gave that to you?
Who gave it to me? I don't know. I wrote it down in a college application because it sat with me. I'm not sure who said it.
Okay.
It might be somebody very famous. And I just realized I had to just soak up what was available, and to have an opinion.
Right.
You know, to listen for not, like, beware the man of one book suggests that if we're just have one thing coming through us that we're spouting.
Absolutely.
And so having that interplay between like what's coming in and how it has traction with the world really mattered.
Yeah. No, that's great, especially in a digital age, huh? Get off your screen, go read a book, take it outside, lie under a tree, read the book. Okay, so what's the one thing that keeps you up at night? As someone building, which is so true for you, I don't even think you realise it, building a career as an alternate physician in design and architecture, in human coaching, and now as a podcast presenter. Is there anything at all that keeps you up at night?
Yeah. Several things do, but one is I'm curious about whether humans deserve democracy.
Huh. Boy, do we have to have an extended interview. I will definitely discuss that with you. Yes, definitely.
It's a great responsibility, and
yes,
the way our brains are wired, where we tend to certain things, certain conveniences, and certain decisions of money, and that feedback loop to make sure that the pocket of gold, the pile of gold next to me is big enough, compels us to not make decisions that really affect our community and the planet. And it's just such a shame. So, like,
without responsibility, that's the thing that I find. It's almost like this innate irreverence that it's going to be given regardless, and it's not. It's something that democracy has to be earned. So I'm so on the same page with you on that. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for our future, we'll debate that later. So what does living full tilt mean for you personally?
It means you participate and play at the highest level, hold yourself to the standard, and stretch your attention span for time and community ongoingly. And as you do that, the decisions you make, the purchases you make, the people you spend time with, the people who you need near you will develop. And as the richness of those conversations grow, I think we solve like what's needed without one voice leading the way.
Well, yeah, let's hope so. And let's hope that's what Full Tilt delivers to the world, because that's also what I'm very similar mission, very aligned. So thanks for that, Rajiv. Next chapter, I'm scared to ask. After all the things you've been doing, and now with your podcast, and obviously that's going to take you, it already has taken you into different types of experiences. Is there something that you think you're going to build towards that you can even see now that the world doesn't know about yet?
Well, I don't know what I haven't seen, but I do think I think these conversations are getting deeper and brighter. I do think that the retreats and the connections and the conversations of this in an active, proactive, participating group of ambitious, driven people who listen to how we play within nature. Like it's just it has to. Like, I'm just innately optimistic. I'm not blindly optimistic. I still want to participate, and I think our designs look like that. And I think people see that when they show up. It's not just to defend yourself. It is to drop the guard and play and participate at a higher level. And I think the retreat experience that we're building will. I believe just has to grow in the right direction.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Listen, it's been so great talking to you and meeting you, and it's been fantastic. So thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to following up with where all your ideas land, because so many of them are really at the core of the things I'm interested in. So it's been great spending time with you. Thanks so much.
Belinda, thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.